All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to. I don't even know what this is tonight. I got Mitchell on Discord. Mitchell sent me this picture earlier for the artist rendition of the new Trump class battleship, and I was like, what the holy fuck is this? And so I just couldn't resist. So I have Mitchell on Discord here, and we are going to have a not so enlightened conversation about what on earth this is. I immediately saw the 5-inch gun wing turrets. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. And this whole thing's out of proportion anyway, I think. Mitchell, are you here on Discord?
Yep, I'm here.
Welcome aboard. So,
And your reaction basically summed up mine. Like, what the hell?
this was the best part of the ending of my day. I was finishing up some paperwork, and I was on an annoying phone call involving paperwork that I didn't want to do, and I saw this float across my Discord. I almost just like screamed while on the phone with this very nice lady from I don't know where she was, but she spoke pretty good English, so that was at least nice. So, um, yeah, so before we get into the news article, we're going to look at this artist rendition here. So we've got this thing up front, which I guess is a railgun. I'm not sure if it's proportioned right. And it's like way, way forward, which I'm not sure about that. And then you got these vertical launch tubes. Then you got your 5-inch guns right behind it in sort of a wing turret formation. More vertical launch tubes. You got, I guess it's an Aegis radar. You got whatever these things are in your front tower. You've got, I don't know what this is in the middle. I guess some laser beams, which, that's good. Pew, 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 shooting down jets. And then you've got more vertical launch tubes in the back and a helicopter pad. So, that's not completely awful. Honestly, we could work with this. I wish I had Microsoft Paint going on here. But you wanna roast the picture first. You want to get into the article. What do you want to do, Mitchell?
Well, yeah, I'd say the picture basically probably because they haven't even probably drawn up any kind of plans even close to reality yet. This is not just mainly artist rendition. It's probably more the artist's imagination.
It might be some AI thing. I don't know because all this comes from like a while back. Didn't Trump casually say in a speech, "How come we don't have battleships anymore? Battleships are cool." And I think that's where this is all came from. Right? I don't think there's actually any. They're not actually going to make new battleships, are they? Hey, Shadow
But
Wolf.
no, not battleships as far as like the World War II. That's how you'd think of battleships in the traditional sense. This is more like, what you would call these days, considering the old classification systems like battleship, cruiser, destroyer, frigate, and like that, were based on back from the days of like the artillery ships. Yeah, you'd be more properly call it a large surface combatant.
Yeah. Well, it's basically just a missile carrier,
Yeah,
which which makes sense. I mean, and the big problem with missile boats, the vertical launch tubes are awesome because you can cram all kinds of freedom into a ship like this, but they're hard to reload. I think they require like a special reloading ship in calm seas or like a port somewhere. Um,
yes.
because the it's not something you can't just reload the missile tubes in combat. You've got however many missiles you've got, and that's what you've got.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, from what I understand reading the article, that very forward missile launcher that shows a very large missile coming out, that's basically going to be specialized launcher for supposedly hypersonic missiles, if and when we can ever develop a working one.
yeah, Shadow
And
Wolf says this
then,
looks like a ugly Arleigh Burke destroyer. Yes, pretty much right.
yes, it's like nightmare version.
I don't know if we need hypersonics on a battleship though. I mean, it'd be nice, but don't you want to deploy hypersonic? Ideally, don't you want to deploy hypersonics from an airplane? That way, it's already got altitude, and you don't have to burn all that fuel just getting it up in the
well,
air.
well, not necessarily. Look at the Russians' version called Oreshnik.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
They've got a
basically
vertical launch one that's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, and but well, basically, yeah, like the very front launcher is supposed to be hypersonic missiles in forward of the 5-inch guns. Now the one after the 5-inch guns and back toward the rear, and I think what they're saying is in the middle there between the two superstructure parts, there's a third quote unquote normal, vertical launch system as well,
Well, let's go
where
see
this
what
thing will
this.
be carrying a crap load of missiles.
Let's see.
Yes,
Let's see what the
in
article
between the
says.
lasers.
All
Yeah.
right, so I'm pulling up the article here. We got all the Navy advertisements. And it says the U.S. Navy will take delivery of of new build battleships, the largest in modern existence. An announcement from President Trump in Florida. Oh, maybe they are serious about this. President Trump's Secretary of Defense, Peter Hegseth. It's called the Secretary of War now. Thank you. Secretary of State Little Marco Rubio and Secretary of State or Secretary of the Navy John Fallon were in attendance. Announced this under the Golden Fleet, which it's Trump, of course it's going to be gold. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Their initiative to restore American shipbuilding, which we probably need. All four gave remarks. The ships named after President Donald Trump's the Trump class will be 30 to 40,000 ton warships. Those are smaller than the Iowas, surpassing the
30.
largest.
There's still, you look at like the North Carolina and South Dakota class that we built for World War II preceding the
Uh huh.
Iowas. They were 35,000 tons.
Yeah, surpassing the largest surface combatants in service today. Okay, yeah, because we don't have, including the largest existing Russian Navy Kirov class nuclear powered battle cruiser. Rendering of the lead ship, the USS Defiant, features large SPY 6 radar arrays, laser firing at targets out of view, and at least 100 vertical launch cells. We better have at least 100 vertical launch cells. Doesn't like the Arleigh Burke have like 90 of them or something?
Something like it. If
Yeah.
not, if not, at least the last of the Ticonderoga class cruisers that were based on the old Spruance class destroyer hull. Uh, yeah, they were packing quite a substantial amount of vertical launch
Yeah, so if you're
cells.
going to call it a battleship, you better have like 300. I think you need at least 300 vertical launch missiles.
Yeah,
We're desperately in need of ships. Well, yeah, because China's building a whole lot of them. We used to build Iowa, Missouri, and Alabama. These will be 100 times the force and power. I mean, now, one advantage I see to battleships is armoring them up from all those little annoying drones like what the Houthis were throwing at us. Because modern destroyers aren't really, they're just little tin cans, right? They're not, as Lorenzo would put it, they're not really armored, are they? I don't think they are.
well, from what I understand now, way back in the day, for one, when they started building the Ticonderoga class, guided missile cruisers, they actually started putting like at least Kevlar armor around the magazines.
But that's not
And
that's not going to stop it. Oh my God! Look at the actual real picture here. They actually had the artist rendition on display, and oh no, oh Muffin, no, we're
yeah,
gonna we're gonna have to fix that.
yeah,
Oh,
and then with the for the Arleigh Burks, to where for decades, starting back in the 50s, to reduce top weight, the Navy had went with like aluminum superstructure, a lot of aluminum fittings.
right.
Well, with the Arleigh Burks, they went back to good old fashioned structural steel because of a little accident that occurred in 1975 with one of the early 1960s guided missile cruisers, USS Belknap,
Right.
that collided with the old conventional carrier that, the John F. Kennedy. And basically, what happened was they collided with one of the elevators sticking out or some portion of the flight deck, and it dumped a bunch of jet fuel onto the superstructure of the Belknap, which caught fire and promptly melted
All the aluminum.
all the aluminum.
Yeah.
And after that, they went designed the Arleigh Burke class, and they said, "Screw this! We're building these ships to be able to take damage, and they went back to good old fashioned steel as far as the superstructure and other things.
Right. But these don't have like, a foot of armor or anything like that. This is just all probably regular cold, regular like soft steel. I mean, maybe they're using ballistic steel. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's no telling because all we've seen is just what basically what I could find looking today. This is the only one article that had anywhere close to any kind of technical detail, shall we
Yeah.
say, regarding the ship, and nothing detailed as far as construction, whether or not it's going to have armor, what type of propulsion plant it's going to have, especially considering they mentioned it being supposed to be nuclear powered, which me being spending 20 years in the Navy part of the nuclear power program on board submarines, that leaves me with a lot of questions: is what type of reactor plant are they exactly going to put in this thing?
I don't know. Maybe one of
Because
those new DARPA fusion reactors if they're going to be powering all those pew pew lasers. I mean, I know that the Navy's been working on some free electron lasers. I kind of want to build one in my backyard too. I ran enough power in my workshop that I could build a free electron laser. I was going to call it the Second Amendment, and take it to in the 4th of July whenever we go out to somebody's farm and shoot a bunch of guns at barrels. I want to be able to take the free electron laser and just go zorch and just melt the thing.
yes,
Um,
because as you mentioned, you're talking about having a railgun and lasers, along with all the electronics that are added on. That is going to require a significant amount of electrical generating
Yeah,
capacity.
you're not doing that off a normal aircraft carrier reactor. I mean, you're going to be looking at something big. Now, railguns.
Uh,
My understanding with the railguns, because I did a little bit of research on railguns back in college. Back in grad schools a long time ago. But these things burn through the barrels pretty quick. You don't get a lot of shots out of them before it
yeah,
warps the barrels.
that was my understanding as well. However, a couple articles I came across in passing over the past couple of months, it's basically saying of all people, the Japanese seem to have found a solution to barrel wear with
Well,
railguns, and they've actually developed one, from what I understand, actually mounted one on one of their ships already.
that wouldn't surprise me.
Which, if
Uh,
that's the case, well, more power to them.
well, and what's
But
nice about
yes,
the railguns, you can get a lot of distance. I was watching it was a video a long time ago where they're talking about an anti-air shell that you'd fire out of a railgun that basically has a whole lot of steel marbles in it essentially, and you fire the railgun some great distance away, and then at a certain point when it gets into the proximity of the missile, it just releases all the marbles out the side and just shotguns it. I mean, you could do some cool things with the railgun for over the horizon,
yeah,
but
yeah. But back this moment, like you said, to like the amount of electrical power. That's one of the reasons why they quit building the Nimitz class carriers and went with the Ford class carriers. Developed a whole new reactor plant for them
right,
because it had gotten to the point over the years. Like they launched the Nimitz when I was like just starting my junior year in high school back in 1975.
yeah.
And they said over the years, with all the electronics and other systems requiring electrical power, they had to add on, especially those new electromagnetic catapults. It was getting to where the Nimitz class carriers, with their power plants, couldn't pump out sufficient electrical power.
Did they ever get the electromagnetic catapults working, or are they going to go back to steam? Because Trump was
Um,
talking about steam at one point that the
I'm best I can
electromagnetic wasn't
figure.
working.
The electromagnetic catapults are still a work in progress here. They're still tweaking on them, get them right. But with they said with the Ford class carriers, because electromagnetic catapults and all additional electronic systems they have to put in nowadays, their new reactor plant. I think it was like the A4W was the model they're doing now. Said that reactor plant, associated equipment, it would like be putting out like something like 30 to 35% more electrical power than what the what the propulsion plant on a Nimitz class carrier could put out.
One of the
So,
thoughts, if we go back to the picture real quick, let's go. Um, Instead of having with modern drones, you'd almost want a bunch of like drone launching tubes out the sides, like in the Battlestar Galactica show, where you just like launch waves and waves of long range propeller drones or jet drones just out the
yeah.
side, for long range targets. Because you don't need you don't need a big flight deck like an aircraft carrier. Because the only reason you need a flight deck is so you can recover the airplane. But if with modern drone warfare, if you have a bunch of long range drones, and they even have drones that carry other drones. I think the Russians were working on something like that. And the Chinese were working on like air refueling drones. They can send things even longer distances. So you could have a bunch of drone launch tubes out the side, but I
Yeah. For all we know, one of those three vertical launch systems might end up well being set up for launching drones.
yeah, but if you're going to be doing a wing drone, there's this sort of wing drone that the Russians and Ukrainians are shooting at each other. Various type of wing drones. They're relatively slow, propeller driven, really long range, and I don't think you can launch those vertically. I think they have to be launched horizontal.
Well, considering it's going to be like something on the order of 30 to 40,000 tons,
You'll have quite a lot
and
of room.
basically the size like a South Dakota class battleship. I know they showed the one rear shot of it from the stern, the artist rendition. For if you have substantial enough flight deck and hangar space to easily carry two helicopters, it seemed like you could also have facilities for carrying a bunch of winged drones that you could also, launch off the back.
Actually, you know what you could do? Let me pull the picture up one more time. In this back area right here where they're shooting up that missile, you could have a landing pad for a helicopter and have it kind of move to the side to launch missiles out from under. So you can even double duty that stuff if you wanted. If you want to squeeze
Yeah,
yet more missiles into this thing.
yeah.
All right, let's go see what the rest of this article says. So it's gonna have a railgun, which all right. At least four Block 3 electronic attack systems integrated into the superstructure, providing electronic attack and deception against incoming missiles. High resolution rendering provided by the Naval News. 221 cell rolling airframe missile launchers are visible midship. Three vertical
Yes,
launch banks.
those rolling airframe missile launchers. That's basically like the new version of like close-in weapon system. Instead of having the phalanx with a 20 millimeter cannon, you basically got those small rolling airframe missiles that serve as anti-missile defense.
Now, what is a rolling airframe missile? Those just like small interceptor missiles?
Yeah, just a small interceptor missile, and it's basically stabilized by spinning, just like an artillery shell on its way to target.
Okay. And then I guess 155 millimeter, is that 5 inches? 25.
That's about a six.
It's about yeah, it's about that's
Slightly
close to
bigger than a
6.
6 inch.
Yeah, because 1 inch is about 25 millimeters. Because Saint 2.9 is about a 74 millimeter gun, if I recall. So design started with me in my first term. Is whatever. There's not really a lot. See, launch cruise missiles. Head of the larger, hypersonics, I guess, if we ever get that working. Up to 25 of these could be built. Uh, I mean, they better be heavily armored because they're just going to be big old targets. I mean, because realistically, our naval threat of the future is going to be China. Russia's not going to get into a naval fight with us. They're too busy having a big land army. Yeah. Shadow says 155 millimeter 6 inch. Um, I don't think Britain has a navy anymore, and even if we decide to finish what we started in 1776, we don't have to worry about them too much. France is busy doing France things. Japan likes us. I mean, really, the only person with a navy that doesn't like us is China, and they're going to have their navy, I believe, is designed to be more coastal, where they can hide under their umbrella of shore to sea long range missiles. So, and we're not going to be taking these ships close to China anyway because we don't want to get ourselves missiled. So these would be mostly just patrolling relatively friendly waters, I would think. Because these aren't really assault ships. You're not going to be assaulting enemy. Uh, if we ever have to assault foreign shores, we're still going to have to do that with long-range missiles and aircraft carriers. I guess these vertical launch missiles can go pretty far. What's the range on the Russian Oreshnik? That's got some distance. But then the Russians say they have this nuclear-powered missile that's got 10,000-mile range or an unlimited range, depending on which press release. So there's China's aircraft carriers don't have any planes. Really? How do you have an aircraft carrier with no planes? Do they just not know how to land? Why do they have no planes, Shadow Wolf? Surely the Chinese have planes that can land on aircraft carriers. We'll be meeting with Prime to discuss production schedules. Only way they'll be able to do it is with the new shipyards. I mean, you would think that we have shipyards that can still build ships, like the Newport News shipyard should be able to do it, right? With class designed to attack the biggest guns. NAS will reach out and kill the archers. Defiant has the size capacity to serve as fleet commanders. Now, realistically, having a fleet command ship is useful. Something that's not as big of a target as an aircraft carrier that has all the command and communication infrastructure.
Yes, it would be.
And so, so it doesn't have to necessarily be so heavily armed. You'd want a heavily armored, very strong anti-air, kind of like an Aegis cruiser or something like that, to defend against incoming threats. It has all the command and control to be a forward operating base without being necessarily an aircraft carrier. And if it's not such a big visible target, because I don't think you can stealth an aircraft carrier. Those things are, those are going to be primary targets.
Yeah, I think even David Copperfield would have a little bit of a challenge with doing that.
But if you're gonna do that, honestly, why not just build a really big fucking submarine? Make a mother of all submarines that we can go underwater and try and hide. I guess submarines wouldn't be as fast.
Oh, you might be surprised.
I mean, because how fast can you get a submarine going?
Greater than 20 knots.
Oh, that's not bad. Can you get them over 30 knots? Like on the surface?
Per congressional directive,
Uh-huh.
what speed and depth our submarines can go to is considered classified.
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
But I would
yeah.
imagine that you could get a submarine, at least on the surface, going pretty fucking fast with a nuclear powered submarine. And you could fit just as many vertical launch tubes on a submarine as you could on a Trump class battleship, or at least just about.
Well, consider that back about 20 years ago, the first four of the Ohio class submarines, aka the Trident ballistic missile submarines, including the two I served on, were converted over to, instead of SSBNs with ballistic missiles, they were converted into SSGNs, Tomahawk cruise missile carriers.
Right. How many Freedom Seas do they carry?
I'd have to Google that. Here. You can give me just a second.
Sure. But because if you're just looking at delivering missiles, and submarines underwater probably reasonably hard to detect from the air, even with modern stuff. I guess you want to be on the surface to shoot down aircraft, but you could dive and. I mean, I could see why you might want a battleship, and probably a battleship would be cheaper than an equivalent size submarine.
Okay, here's a little quick deal right there. Said it was basically the Ohio, the Michigan, the Florida, and the Georgia, which I was served on the Michigan and Florida. So these submarines are capable of carrying up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles.
And Tomahawks
And
are not
designed,
small.
no, and are designed for a variety of missions, including land attack, special operations, and intelligence gathering. In other words, they're basically almost special ops boats.
Yeah, so I mean, I wonder if it would make more sense instead of having Trump-class battleships, you can make Trump-class super submarines. Um, I mean, if Trump wants a
Yep.
battleship, he's probably going to get a battleship. I mean, something to carry a railgun and a bunch of missiles won't be bad. I just, realistically, you want to design your ship for the fight that you're going to be expecting, and really the next big purpose that we're going to need from the American Navy is how do we secure the contested oceans from a future Chinese Navy. I don't think the only other big powers out there, India's not going to cause trouble on the oceans. And like I said, I don't think Russia's got bigger problems. They're not aspiring to be a global sea power. So it's really us or the Chinese. And I think a lot of sea combat's going to be air or land-based long-range aircraft. Like did you hear about how they're making a new F-30 or an F-15? You'd use an F-35 as a spotter plane, then you have an F-15 missile boat just going along with like 12 air-to-air missiles that the F-35 can target for, and these things will fly at like Mach 2.2 and have a range of several thousand miles.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, basically, I know I heard of one thing a few months ago to where basically to make a very long range air-to-air missile, what the what they did was they basically took one of the long range standard surface-to-air missiles that the Navy was using and basically converted it to where it could be air launched.
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yep.
And so so like if you want to control, this is why those islands out there in the Pacific, like Guam, are so important. If you have a bunch of long range F-35s on Guam, and you could deploy them off the island, have some carrier-based F-35s do some targeting, and fire really long-range missiles, or even just have your AWACSs flying along because they have a pretty long radar range, I'd imagine. So I really see a battleship as being more of a command ship rather than we're gonna go slug it out. Well,
For
I
that matter, I don't think you'd really need something as large as 30 to 40,000 tons.
well I mean
That's
my naval philosophy: lots of small ships and not that many big ships. But
yeah,
uh,
which even basically, like you said, where they also had that company article about the canceling the Constellation program and going to be developing a new frigate design off the existing Coast Guard
let's go see what
cutter
let's go
design.
see what this guy has to say. So Secretary of the Navy have directed a new frigate class, part of POTUS's Golden Fleet, built on a proven American design, American shipyards, American supply chain. Yeah, I mean you got anything defense related has to be an American supply chain. Otherwise, let's see what this guy has to say here.
As you've heard me say, we will field capability at the speed of the threat in real time, not the comfort level of bureaucracy. We will deliver on a wartime footing, and we will unleash the American industrial base to do it. Competition, accountability, and real output. Steel in the water.
Recent operations from the Red Sea to the Caribbean make the requirement undeniable. Our small surface combatant inventory is a third of what we need. We need more capable blue water small combatants to close the gap and keep our DDGs focused on the high-end fight.
To deliver at speed and scale, I have directed the acquisition of a new frigate class based on HII's Legend Class National Security Cutter design, a proven American-built ship that has been protecting U.S. interests at home and abroad.
The frigate will follow the same proven approach we've used with the Arleigh Burke destroyers, building it smart from the start, then upgrading it in steps over time as the threat and technology evolve. We've also been clear-eyed about what happens in conflict. Other countries will always prioritize their own fleets, not U.S. ships that depend on foreign industry. That's why this is an American design, backed by American workers.
So just pausing it real quick, I mean, having a whole crap ton of little Angry Bee warships seems like a much better idea than having 25 big battleships. I mean, you know, maybe a few battleships for command, but I like the idea of having a bunch of small frigates with air defense and can deal with, you know, all the little bullshit threats that we have to constantly deal with. Because honestly, I think our biggest problem is going to be things like the Houthis and Somali pirates and all the little skirmishy stuff, protecting transports. But let's keep going here.
American suppliers and an established logistics and maintenance network. So wherever the ship sails, when the American flag goes into port, it does so with American industry firmly behind it.
The President and Sec War have signed off on this as part of the Golden Fleet. Our goal is clear: launch the first hull in the water in 2028. To expand capacity and production across our maritime industrial base, we will acquire these ships using a lead yard and competitive follow-on strategy for multi-yard construction. Shipyards
That's
will
a
be
good
measured
idea.
against one outcome: delivering combat power to the fleet as fast as possible.
Like the medium landing ship, leveraging a complete design.
Oh yeah, have you heard about the medium landing ship that they're doing? This thing, I saw a video on this the other day, and that looked pretty badass. Where they're doing like a roll-on ferry system where you drive the vehicles into the back, you know, at port, and then when it deploys, they just roll right out the front. And they're not like gigantic assault ships; they're just smaller, more agile landing ships built on some proven European design that we then took and Americanized. But these things look like they're going to be a good idea.
And production baseline approach will allow the Navy and
That was
shipbuilders.
their idea behind the Constellation class frigate design, was take a proven design that was already in production and being used, and, you know, just make a few tweaks here and there to, like, you know, the electronic systems and such to Navy things. But then the same person that was in charge of that littoral combat ship program that
Oh, that was a shit show.
He was the same one that was in charge of the Constellation frigate program,
Right.
and they ended up trying to turn it into a mini Arleigh Burke. Let's put it this way: the first two hulls of the Constellation class already sitting in the water. The only problem is they can't finish them because they still haven't finished the design for half the frigging ship.
Yeah, I was the person who was talking about the medium landing craft. One of the criticisms about it is it doesn't have a lot of defensive weaponry, and, you know, what happens if it gets into like a close-in fight against like pirates or other things. And the commentator was like, well, it'll have 200 Marines on board. Worst case, the Marines just get up on the deck and do Marine things, and that'll solve most problems. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that probably would.
Yeah. Or else they try to run up on them and, you know, attack them with machine guns from the little skiffs or whatever. Yeah. You're talking a little fishing skiff they're running around in, and you're in a how many 1,000-ton warship?
Yeah, with a bunch of Marines on board who are just looking for trouble. Yeah, I think I'm going to put my money on the 200 Marines.
If nothing else, put the rudder hard over and run over the little bastards.
Yeah, that is true. Oh my God, when I was taking my New York motorboat license exam when I was a little kid. At one point I got pretty close to a large cargo ship. It probably wasn't even that large, but when you get up close, and boy, those things are big. And yeah, I kept my distance because I did not want that thing to accidentally turn or do anything. I didn't realize how slow they turned at the time, but yeah, if you're in a little boat and something big wants to have a piece of you, that's not going to end well. All right, let's see what this guy keeps saying.
To reduce costs, schedule, and technical risk. We know this frigate design works. We know it operates with the fleet. And most importantly, we know how to build it now.
We're done admiring the problem. Our focus is on readiness. With a smart, quick, affordable build, we will deliver the capacity our warfighters need.
They did a good job with this. I'm gonna go and nice. I'll go post that. And they had a really good. I mean, now one thing I will say about Trump is that his team puts out good. They know media, and they put out some snappy videos. So they did good with that. I think that's a better, having a bunch of frigates is probably a better idea than a battleship, and you can still put some vertical launch tubes on a frigate, but really that's not their job. Their job is just to deal with small threats. You could have some. What we really need is a small naval drone launcher. Just something to go and just spit out a bunch of little. Because if we look at what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine war, even those fiber optic drones can operate, 30 kilometers, 50 kilometers. Some of the independent reporting, where they're interviewing people on either side, the drone operators, and they're saying the fiber optic spools can let the drones go out there like 30 to 50 kilometers. And you could do a lot of interesting things. Now, you wouldn't really want a bunch of fiber littering up the ocean, though. That would be a real mess and probably be a problem. But even with radio controlled or satellite guided, you could do some stuff with drones. I think have little drone carriers. That's something to probably look into.
Yeah. Drone warfare. From what I've been checking around, some of the channels like got one that Dr. Alexander Clark, like naval historian and Drakenophil and like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when they had like Q&A sessions, I posed the question to them. Said, comparing drone warfare to like aerial warfare in the last century, said what stage do you think the development of drone warfare is at right now? And I made a comment, said, I'm thinking it's somewhere along about what it was late World War One, early 20s. It's still developing, and they said, yeah, it's still pretty much in its adolescence right now. We don't really know yet what it's really going to develop into, because Ukraine War is the first war that we really saw a heavy use of these type of drones, both on land and those little
what I think you're probably going to end up with would be some sort of two-seater fighter plane. Maybe either a stealth fighter plane or like an F-15. You can do a two-seater F-15, can't you? I bet you could.
Yes.
And so you'd have some sort of two-seater fighter plane. We've got a pilot and you have a drone commander, and use some sort of direct laser communication. That way, it's hard to jam. To control just a swarm of drones, you launch the drones from ships or drop them out of a B-52, or because they're redoing the B-52 also. And so you could, well, hell, an F-15 can carry like 20,000 pounds of weapons or something. I didn't realize how much an F-15 could carry. It can carry a lot. But you could deploy a whole bunch of aerial drones, some sort of like stealthy jet-powered drone, and laser guide them in, and that would be hard to jam. Once we get AI going better.
Well, that's supposedly eventually going to be one of the capabilities of the F-35. They've been working on something called the Wingman program.
Yeah.
For years, going like F-35, where single F-35 could control like upwards of like something like four drones, possibly more. For drones to have them act as like remote controlled wingmen go
Yeah,
after
well,
areas
and
aerial threats.
from a naval standpoint, because you've got naval versions of an F-35, you could have drone carrying ships instead of having all the vertical launch. I think you just shoot them out the side like Battlestar Galactica, and you just launch a gajillion drones that have some sort of AI, control that lets the F-35 or whatever's commanding them have relatively easy access. Don't use the UAD AI though, because that sucks. Um, and and then you just direct your swarm of drones in to just pepper whatever target. Because if we're gearing up, because we're going to be gearing up for a peer conflict, likely against China. That's going to be our threat. I don't think it's actually going to come to a direct war with China. I think it's going to stay economic. Because I don't see how you have a direct war among major powers that have nuclear weapons without it going nuclear. And the Russians know this, the Chinese know this, the Indians and Pakistanis know this. I don't know if the Americans know this or not. Some of our guys in charge are a little bit dumb, but our peer adversaries would know this, and so I think that you're either going to have deterrence fleets, on the high seas, and there's going to be some proxy stuff. Like, I fully think that we're going to go smack down Venezuela, because we're going to have to do something to distract from us getting our butts kicked in Ukraine, just to show the rest of the world, hey, when America gets directly involved, because we can't get directly involved in Ukraine without it being World War III. But we could go beat up on Venezuela, show off, hey, look at how good America still is. And then, Russia and China can't get directly involved in response, because if they get directly involved in a Western Hemisphere thing, then it's World War III also. So, as much as the battleships are nice, I really think it's going to be those frigates dealing with, like, Houthi-style, Somali pirate-style, small actors.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, say they do build 25 ships. Well, that's only 25 places they could be, and do you really want to be using a $5 billion, 40,000 ton quote-unquote battleship to have to go deal with a problem that a freaking like 6 or 8,000 ton frigate could easily deal with, especially when you could build like twice or even more as many of those low-end frigates?
Well, and you armor them up enough to stop Houthi-level drones, or the little Hamas drones, or any of those small rockets. Something that can withstand an RPG hit. Because basically, what they're doing is they're putting an RPG equivalent shell on these drones. So you armor it up to be able to stop anti-tank style rounds. And then you would probably be fine.
Yeah, basically, my feeling is this proposal right here for this quote-unquote battleship, it's the Navy's wet dream replacement for the Ticonderoga class cruisers.
Yeah. Well, the Ticonderoga, those are still okay, right? I mean,
we've only got 9 of them left. The rest of them have been decommissioned due to old age.
So you
They
build
started
more
building those things back in the 80s.
Yeah, so you build more cruisers then. I mean,
you make them as it was.
Because how heavy are those cruisers? About 20,000 tons, 15,000 tons?
The Ticonderogas are only about 10,000 tons.
Oh, so they're like the same size as the Arleigh Burkes.
No, they were basically built on the Spruance class destroyer hull.
No shit.
And basically, they've been considered overloaded because the superstructure with those radar arrays.
Right.
That they were basically overloaded, and they can't really carry that many more missiles than what the Arleigh Burke does.
Because the Arleigh Burkes are about 10,000 tons also, right?
Yes, about 9,000 tons.
Yeah.
So. For my money, you want a Ticonderoga class replacement? Make a slightly bigger version of the Arleigh Burke.
Yeah, because the Arleigh Burkes are great. I mean, at least I think they're great. I'm not an expert. I've never.
We're still building them.
We're still building them. Right. I mean, they can't suck because we still make them.
Yeah, it's like one guy said about the thing about the about the new frigate program. Get the hulls in the water, and then you can upgrade them as time goes along. That's basically what they originally did with the Spruance class destroyers when they started building them in the 70s, and upgraded them as time went along with new systems and weapons, and basically was able to evolve that design into the Ticonderogas. And they also did the same with the Arleigh Burkes, where it's like now it's like on Flight 3 or Flight 4,
Yeah.
the latest design.
Now, the real reason you'd want the Battleship instead of an Arleigh Burke, or a bigger Arleigh Burke style cruiser, is you'd want it so you could put the railgun on, and you'd want it for the free electron lasers. Have some nuclear powered. Because an Arleigh Burke's not going to be able to have energy weapons. They don't generate enough power.
That was one of the things they were testing out, basically on. God forgive me for mentioning it. The Zumwalt class, basically what they called the integrated electric propulsion system or something
Right,
like
but
that.
those weren't nuclear though.
No, they were a gas turbine. But basically, what they did is, oh yeah, the gas turbines we have in here for propulsion plant, they're just all hooked up to generators, and basically they have electric motors on the shafts, and basically so the entire output of the propulsion plant is geared toward generating electricity.
Yeah, it's not
which
going
could
to work.
handle all things. And I saw that and I said, well, congratulations. You just reinvented turboelectric drive that you were using in battleships in the 1910s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Zimwalt was a cool dude, but his destroyer, the literal combat ships named after him were not that.
Imagine Zumwalt was originally in the 70s proposed the high-low mix.
Yeah, and which I really like that idea. I mean, I use that a
Yeah.
lot in UAD.
Yeah, and he was the driving impetus between coming out with like the Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates, which, be honest, you could have redesigned that hull and made a perfectly adequate frigate.
I mean,
Serve today, when they retired those in like I think it was like sometime like right around 2010 or so, those ships were still considered so good that out of the 50 or so we had in the fleet, 30 of them were bought up by other countries because they were such solid and reliable ships.
yeah. So I'm going to propose a really crazy idea for the Trump class battleship. Okay, this is gonna be nuts. You get ready for this? Drop all the vertical launch tubes. You don't need it, because if you're only going to have 100 vertical launch tubes, just have an Arleigh Burke destroyer come along with you and provide the 100, vertical launch tubes for a lot less money. Just have the big ass nuclear reactors, fusion if you can get it working. Have a bunch of direct energy weapons, your free electron lasers, get your railgun. You can even go 2 railguns if you really want to for over the horizon type stuff, because while railguns are expensive to build, they're relatively cheap to shoot. And you could even have, if you have these 6-inch guns, I mean, you could have an air defense focused or, dual purpose weapon systems. And then if you need missile support, you could have like big bad radar arrays, but let the Arleigh Burkes or your frigates or just little missile carriers carry the missiles for you, and then that way when they fire their freedom load, they can go back to port and rearm while the battleship stays in theater commanding. Or you know what you could even do? You could even have naval drones that have vertical launch tubes in them, and they could just have little drone ferries, and they just ferry out the missiles, and you target and fire and then go back and reload. You could do a lot of interesting stuff, so you don't actually need the big explodey things to be on the ship itself. You could just have the targeting systems, the railguns, the direct energy weapons, and and drone facilities, and then leave the big vertical launch tubes for smaller ships that can just carry. I remember I was playing Masters of Orion 1, and I needed to deploy just a butt ton of missiles into the enemy, and so I had just a whole bunch. I had a big durable ship that would tank, and then I had a bunch of little missile carrier ships that would then just fly out, launch a bunch of missiles, and then run away. Just a bunch of like little one-shot missile ships. So you don't need the big bad ship to have the missiles. That's there for targeting, endurance, command and control. And you could just use like missile frigates and missile destroyers because we already make really fucking good missile destroyers. And then that way, as we're cycling through the missiles, you instead of having all the Arleigh Burkes, instead of having one battleship go back to reload, because you can't reload at sea. They've tried it, doesn't work very well. If you have, 4 Arleigh Burkes costing less than the battleship and carrying 4 times the number of missiles, you empty one Arleigh Burke, it goes back to port. You still have three Arleigh Burkes worth of missiles to go, right? And you could just cycle them out and have sustainability in combat. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what, you know, like Zumwalt's idea. You had the Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates, which were capable in their own right for doing like convoy escort and taking care of like low level situations like dealing with Houthi pirates, to give you your numbers where you could have a presence. And then you had the high end ships that ended up being like the Ticonderoga class cruisers. And nowadays the Arleigh Burkes as well, to be the high end ships for like going with the carrier battle groups and such, to deal with the big hairy teeth gnashing Chinese Navy or such.
Well, and you could have one of these, so I would take it, I would just build it for air defense and have it just air defense the shit out of things. And then just have it hang out with your carrier task force or your landing ships or your assault fleet, whatever you're going to do. And if anything gets, into view, you've got your free electron lasers, which will have a range of yes. And those have your dual purpose autocannons firing anti-air shells. Because you can have terminally guided ballistic weapons, right? I mean, you can fire a shell and then terminal guide it with fins or gyros or any. There's a number of ways you could do it.
Oh yes, they've been able to do that for a few decades.
Yeah.
I remember what the Army came up with even back in, I think like in the late '80s, early '90s. You even saw it like mentioned on Airwolf, like the Copperhead artillery shell.
Yeah.
Home in on a laser designator.
Yeah, and so why could you do that with air defense as well? You have a tracking laser paint the incoming target, and then you fire one of these 6-inch shells at it because that's going to have some range. And then once it's terminally guided in, it deploys all the little ball of marbles, steel marbles, and because you don't have to actually blow up the incoming missile, you just have to damage it enough that it flies off course and splashes in the water. And, the only thing you have to worry about then is the hypersonics, which we don't really know how to deal with anyway. The only thing that could really work on that would be a directed energy weapon, because you just don't have the lock-on time, because when it comes over the horizon, because it's going to be flying low, you're going to need to have a bunch of lasers all around the ships, just already pointed out in those directions. You're going to have, half a second to lock on and fire. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of time at all.
And just the thought, with the amount of weapons, it's going to require massive amounts of electrical power, like railguns and lasers and such.
You're not going to have room for missiles.
Yeah, that might be the driving factor behind one of the driving factors for them saying the ship's going to be this large, so they can cram a big enough power plant into the damn thing to generate that amount of electrical power.
Yeah, and then at that point, why bother with the vertical launch tubes? I mean, maybe you have a couple of them for anti-ship defense or something, but I would just focus it on energy weapons, a railgun, anti-air, and just have it be a command ship, a support ship that supports the fleet, and then just because how much does an Arleigh Burke cost? Let's somebody want to Google that? So Arleigh Burke costs $2.5 billion. Okay. That's actually that's a lot of fucking money. That's
Us going government for our taxes.
Holy shit, how are they $2 billion? How much is a Gerald Ford
Look at the current state of the rest of the Navy shipbuilding program.
Oh my fucking god. How much does a Gerald Ford cost?
Be prepared for sticker shock.
Hell, it's only 13.3 billion to build, including research about 37. But all right, so other than the initial build of 37, so 13.3 billion dollars. It's a lot
A
less than I
lot of
thought.
money.
It's a lot less than I thought it would be. So you could have
It
like
only,
five
it only
hourly.
take, it only takes 10 years to build each one.
Yeah. So I mean, man, Arleigh Burks can't cost $2.5 billion. Hell, I mean, you could fucking get the Somalis in Minnesota to pay for that with all their fraud. Holy crap!
And so, given
You
given
build
that
8
that
of them.
an Arleigh Burke cost $2.5 billion, do you really think this proposed 40,000-ton freaking wonder ship
Oh,
is only going to cost $5 billion?
oh no, it's going to cost $100 billion.
It's going to easily come close to the same cost as a Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier.
Well, those are saying
I,
13 billion, but then again, it was about 40 billion to develop, and they don't work right.
yeah, but they're projecting the cost for this quote unquote battleship to be $5 billion. I'm like, no. From what I've seen in my life and knowing how the Navy and the Pentagon works, I would be willing to bet you money the cost was going to be closer to 10 billion, if not north of that. If they actually go ahead with building these damn things.
I don't think they're going to build them. I mean, what would make sense, personally, is you make like a 20,000-ton command ship, have it just all nuclear reactor, because I don't think we're there on fusion yet. Probably don't even worry about the railgun. Just have a bunch of energy weapons. I mean, if you can get the railgun, I don't know what the range of the railgun that the Japanese are using, but if they've got a good one, get the Japanese railgun, and
Yeah.
have some over the horizon ballistics with terminal guidance. Have the energy weapons. Just have it be a dedicated anti-air and command ship platform for commanding a fleet of Arleigh Burks, and then just be done with it.
If
But-
you want a basic idea of what I think the size of a useful large surface combatant would be and still be fairly affordable, Google the USS Long Beach.
Let's see.
And look at the stats on it.
USS Long Beach, 1959, speed 30 knots. It's respectable. 15,500 tons.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
that's
had the
solid.
Yeah, you had the two what was called back in the day the early surface air missiles, the 3T program.
Yeah.
Tartar, Terrier, and Talos. And Talos was freaking
Yeah.
huge. You had the two Terrier twin-arm Terrier launchers up front, and the Talos launcher on the back. That thing was nuclear powered, and it had basically the granddaddy version of the Aegis radar system up on it. But that was the Navy's first basic tries at designing nuclear surface combatants for the missile age and being nuclear powered.
Yeah.
They built the Enterprise, the CVN-65, and they built the Long Beach, which they figured would be a cruiser platform, and then they built the Bainbridge, which is going to be their idea of like a destroyer type vessel.
He goes, what was this new frigate class called again?
They just called it the FFX.
FFX
Yeah, but basically
cost.
something like you said.
No, that's Final Fantasy
Our-
X. That's
Yeah. If FX and then in parentheses X.
So okay. So here we. So the Constellation class frigate. So it's saying it's going to be about It's going to be $1 billion a pop. So you can get 2.5 of these per Arleigh Burke. But
the
they think they can get them down to 300 million per ship.
Yeah. Well, that was the Constellation.
Yeah, that was the one that was bad. So, But the point is that if they don't fuck this up, under $1 billion a ship, maybe half $1 billion a ship, that seems like a much better idea. All right, well, tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I'm going to probably do some UAD tonight. I might do the American campaign. I might take a break from everybody beating up on Greece, and so how about we take a break? I'll be back in a little while, and if you like this kind of video, because Mitchell just has all kinds of knowledge about this kind of stuff, and I love picking his brain. So if you like this kind of stuff, then let me know in the comments. And like the video, maybe we'll do more. And Mitchell, if you find any more interesting articles that we can make fun of stupid things, maybe this will become a regular event. So,
yeah. My final word on it would be, if they're basically looking for something bigger than Arleigh Burke and to replace the Ticonderoga class cruisers for, like, high-end threat carrier escort, they could design something much more smaller and less costly than this. As we mentioned, like, say, a 15,000-ton version of the Arleigh Burkes, or, same size new version of the Ticonderogas. This is basically, this is basically some admiral's wet dream.
yeah, well, and Trump likes building it big, so
Yeah.
But the gold when he mentioned the Golden Fleet, it's like, oh my God, that is a very Trump thing.
What are we coming the Spanish Navy?
Well,
again?
we had the Great White Fleet
Behind?
back in the day when our gunboat diplomacy. So why not do a Golden Fleet? I mean, hey, could be worse. All right, let's wrap it up here. I'll see you guys in a little while for some UAD. I'm gonna go make some supper, and thanks for hanging out, guys. I will see you later.